Hi guys, it's again time for much awaited review, and today I am going to play Farm 51's Chernobylite, which had been on early access ever since it released in 2019. Chernobylite can be called as a stalker twin with greater supernatural elements, with more haunting elements, with a pinch of quest with respect to saving a loved one, also involved with respect to the protagonist. So adding much to this is Fenris Wolf on behalf of Gamer Overlord, and I do request you all to please watch this video till the end. Hit that like as well as the subscribe button, and do make sure you click that bell icon so that you can get the latest updates first from our side. So making myself and everything else clear, let's proceed to the review. So we will be starting with the system requirements, and we all know that Chernobylite still runs on the configuration model set in 2019. That is, to barely run the game you need a second gen Intel Core i5-2500K processor with at least a GPU of 2GB NVIDIA GTX 560 and 8GB of RAM. This requirement is set as a benchmark only to run the game almost at par to 30 FPS on max medium settings with anti-aliasing off, with all other effects such as the textures, shadows being off. For optimal performance to play this game, you need at least a 4th gen CPU like the Core i7-4790K, or a 2nd gen AMD processor would do good with a 4GB GTX 970 NVIDIA card. And you all know, to step up more in the game with smoothness, you need that 16GB DDR4 RAM's boost, and for HDR option, NVIDIA TA cards would suit really well. Now coming to the campaign part, the basic premise of Chernobylite as far as sci-fi survival games go is fairly simple and straight. Like, you are a former physicist named Igor who is on a quest to find his wife who disappeared under mysterious circumstances about 30 years ago. Well, that matches a bit with the Resident Evil Village plot, right? Yeah, the wife part, but not the duration, as the duration is mentioned as 30 years. So you would not really actually imagine that 30 years would actually feel like without a spouse in such a scenario. Okay, jokes apart, Igor's investigation is progressed by finding clues out in the world with the use of different gadgets he has, such as a VR simulation where you can recreate past events, charter up intricacies, and almost like the Batman of the Arkham fame, roll back and fast forward the clues. Yep, that looks really cool. So Igor believes that all his questions can be answered inside the Chernobyl power plant, but however the place is locked up tight by a private military company, and you need to spend a considerable amount of time to break in. After you are inside the exclusion zone, you have to prep up and build a suitable team to prepare for the final heist, gathering crucial information, using tools, matching the dots of the various investigations, and also in the name of side quests, you also have daily missions to complete, which was there when the early access came in 2019. As much from the beginning, the story looks very simple but creates an atmosphere of tremendous uncertainty only because you are not playing a gutsy FPS heavy protagonist. You are just a physicist hunting the truth, and without the actual tools which are needed with respect to the situation, it's like just another horror game. Farm 51 has tried to build the storyline quite really well, but I feel the game lacks to mix the protagonist's story with that of the other characters, something we saw in games such as Resident Evil Village. Okay, I'll stop comparing now. So big heads up to the campaign as far as keeping it eerie throughout, but at the same time, I feel the atmosphere of the exclusion zone could have been made more believable and vibrant as we see games such as Stalker. Playing Chernobylite now already makes me really excited to play Stalker 2, which we all know is coming by next year, and even when playing that, comparisons are going to be inevitable. For a simple yet eerie campaign, Chernobylite's campaign earns a Overlord score of 7.5 on 10. Now moving on to the graphics part, Chernobylite looks really smooth. I don't have the kind of specifications to call myself the real overlord in today's age, but with the aging 1060 GTX that I am still able to run everything on the max settings. One thing I really liked about Chernobyl's graphic settings was the irritating motion blur in horror genre games, and despite that, if you feel it is undigestible, you can just put that off. The textures are extensive and conducive also. Honestly, this is one of those games where I really felt that Chernobyl vibe other than the TV series, which was just fabulous. Each location from Pripyat to the Red Forest, you get a realistic trip of the exclusion zone, and I'm talking about the textures more than the feel. I think with ray tracing on, this title will look as lavishing as any other AAA FPS games that is there. While I do agree that the facial textures of the characters could have been turned better, I just felt the facial expressions to be a little out of sync, but many would not mind that. Other than the minor glitchy adjustments here and there, Chernobylite earns a graphic score of 8.5 on 10. Now moving on to the gameplay and mechanics, we all know that all horror genre games needs that kind of pump in terms of gameplay, and I especially am skeptical of the gameplay and mechanics of different games. If you guys have played Dishonored, you will recognize the mission structure of Chernobylite. Each mission fairly plants you in story objective to complete with several side tasks all along. It's like a little RPG gets on the way where you need to choose to act in these tasks which will have consequences later on, and it can even affect the environment of the map if you return in future missions. What I primarily like is the decision system, which opens up in the story really well. Like, many of the choices require you to fulfill the desires of your team members, and too many disappointing choices will cause your allies against you. You really need to take notes on that to survive, other than the supernatural elements. Limited resources and fragile health mean that you will need to choose your encounters very carefully, relying on stealth to pick targets one by one. Like other games, you won't succeed if you open fire and try to finish all your enemies at one go. In this game, that's simply not just going to happen. Also, there are not much variances in the enemies you fight, just because the weirdness of the supernatural elements are real low here. Nonetheless, the gunplay seems very satisfying. Also, post missions, you will return to your base and you can spend the evening as per your choice. You will also get to spend any skill points you might have earned during the day, which can unlock real powerful perks. Now, the point where I can see a drawback in the gameplay is a plethora of segmented missions, which makes the game feel a bit broken. There is also no free flow to each location because the areas are quite disconnected, and with very little scope of fast travel, you possibly even give up making to the other part. Other than that, I think it will depend more on how you look at each mission and your choices which take you in the game, and that enables me to give the game a gameplay and mechanics score of 8 on 10. Now, coming to the sound segment of the game, sound is something that is least preferred option to judge in a game, but I would really mind it when it comes to a survival sci-fi horror like Chernobylite. The soundtrack seems okayish, but it really gets too intense in battles, which is nice, but it has its own fare of nuggles, like you won't be able to concentrate on a single enemy whenever that happens during the course of the game. Despite the sound effects of the game being synced, it lacks eeriness and the impact of surviving within a dreadful area such as the exclusion zone. Also, I felt the clanking and the lightning sounds completely out of sync, which are the environmental sounds, and also the impact of jumping onto a creek or from a high raised area felt like the 2000s games, where the heavy feeling of falling is not felt. The sound effect makes you feel like a feather falling, and that really may seem annoying. I had noticed the same thing in the early access, but I really thought that they would fix this issue, because stealth is not the only option in this highly openly extensive environment. Chernobylite therefore can receive more updates, and I hope this gets fixed soon, and therefore the sound of the game earns a score of 6.5 on 10. Now, explaining about the thrill in a sci-fi horror may not be that intriguing, but there is always a score in my head that I give to games with respect to how much eager the game makes me to play it. I would agree that by playing Chernobylite's early hours, I really felt the game tense and exhilarating. I felt the exclusion zone both beautiful and dreadful at the same time, and if you are choosing your areas in the game, I think that is what makes the game a bit more one-sided. I feel Pripyat Port to be very horror-like, where there is a rubble strewn all over the hallways, echoing the sounds of disaster. Other than the repetitive missions, daily missions sound fun because there is more of gunplay and rewards, but there isn't anything to accelerate your campaign. Also, killing enemies are not much satisfying due to the protagonist's skill deficiency, and you are someone who basically looks who is on the run, and all the situations you come across, it's like you are executing a jailbreak. In terms of the investigative elements which I like in a sci-fi horror, that doesn't seems to engage the players as much as other games, and that's where I have to always start comparing again. Overall, for the thrill part in terms of executing the eeriness of the game, I give Chernobylite a thrill quotient score of 7 on 10. Now finally, with the verdict, I can for now say Chernobylite to be a one-time play, but for sci-fi horror enthusiasts, this is definitely a likable post-apocalyptic survival game. While slight repetitions in missions actually diminishes the incredible atmosphere of the game, yet I feel many of the game's structure is highly satisfactory, and that makes me give the game an overall score of 7.5 on 10. So that's it from the review, guys. Don't forget to express your views in the comment section about Chernobylite, the other things that you felt. Also, do follow our Discord server for short updates that we won't be coming in our videos. Also, follow our Instagram and Twitter handles for regular news and updates. We will be coming with another review soon.